the handling of the Zero Division within the Bleach story often stands out as a pivotal turning point for fans, marking it as the point of the story where the 1000-year Blood War arc had started to decline. These 5 shinigami were an elite group whose existence had been hinted at from the very beginning of the story. Kubo had set them up as an ultimate fighting force, a group of powerful shinigami who outrank the entirety of the Gotei 13. How is it that a group who was sold to us as the peak of the shinigami became nothing more than an afterthought during the final arc of the story? In this video, I'm going to delve deep into answering some of these questions, as well as shedding some light on how the Bleach manga had missed the mark with their portrayal of the Zero Division. While we will be talking about some negative aspects about the Zero Division, this video's primary focus will be on how the Zero Division have been redeemed within the all-new 1000-year Blood War arc anime. Squad Zero's redemption arc had truly come out of nowhere. From extended fight sequences to new abilities being revealed, as well as an all-new Bankai revelation, there is so much for us to dive into when it comes to the redemption arc of the Zero Division. Make sure that you stick around until the end of this video, as I'll be discussing some of the potential issues that Kubo may have had when he had originally written the Zero Division within the manga, and how ultimately in the end he had overcome these issues by saving the Zero Division from Fraud Academy and cementing them as one of the greatest groups of shinigami in the entire history of the Soul Society. So without further delay, let's dive into how Kubo had resurrected Squad Zero, and how the 1000-year Blood War arc anime is changing the entire story of the final arc, to the point where the Zero Division may be the main reason as to why the shinigami win the war in the end. In order to fully understand the disappointment surrounding the Zero Division, we need to recall everything that had led up to their introduction into the story, because one of the major reasons as to why manga readers had felt let down stems from how Kubo had built up this group of characters leading up to their introduction, because all of the hype surrounding them was done exceptionally well in my opinion, beginning with how they are first introduced to us within chapter 48, when we see the Menos Grande for the first time, and Rukia states that only the Zero Division members can defeat this massive class of Hollow. It would be the understatement of the century to say that this phrase had aged like milk, especially in hindsight now that we know how far low in the power ranking scale that the Menos Grande fall under. Regardless of this power scaling inconsistency, this is proof enough that Kubo had conceived the Zero Division before the Shinigami had even made their debut within the story, and it's apparent that he had placed the Zero Division above all other Shinigami. The problem that arises following this is that over the next few hundreds of chapters, the scale and levels of power would increase to a point where it would be hard to find a proper place for the Zero Division to exist without actively taking too much away from the narrative. So despite the number of times that they were mentioned or hinted at within the story, introducing them at the right point and giving them a proper explanation as to why they are interfering with the narrative was going to be a tricky but essential thing that Kubo needed to accomplish. If the Zero Division were introduced into the Arrancar arc, then there's two things that could have happened. The first is that they would have turned up and completely wiped the floor with Aizen and his Arrancar army. This would completely lessen the impact of Aizen as an antagonist, and it would cheapen the story that has been told up until that point, and not to mention blueballing fans from some massive payoffs that were set up way early on in the Soul Society arc. So having the Zero Division appear and interfere with Aizen's plans would be definitely very anticlimactic, not allowing characters like Hitsugaya to express their hatred for Aizen because of his manipulation of Momo, or even characters like Hisagi and Komamura who rightfully want answers from Tozen who had betrayed them, and not to mention the sacrifice of Genichimaru, which may not have even happened if the Zero Division intervened here. The second possible way for introducing the Zero Division into the Arrancar arc isn't any better in my opinion, and it's having them introduced into the story following Aizen's successful activation of his transcendent power. Thankfully, neither of these scenarios had played out because the Zero Division were introduced following the first invasion of the Quincy during the 1000-year Blood War arc. Their official debut within the manga occurs alongside a statement that has now become infamous, which reveals that the Zero Division are more powerful than the entirety of the Gotei 13 combined. It wasn't clarified whether if this statement had meant that they were individually stronger than all of the Gotei 13, or if all 5 of them combined are more powerful than the Gotei 13. Even without a proper explanation to this statement, the damage was already done, because this one line had already painted an image of the power level that these individuals possess, hyping that it was something that we have never seen before amongst the shinigami. It had set an unreasonably high bar for the Zero Division to live up to. I think that fans really latching onto this statement had resulted in a lot of them being disappointed from the performance of the Zero Division within the manga. The expectation was set that each of the members of the Zero Division should at the very least be able to fight on a scale that is greater than anything that we have seen from any other shinigami within the story. This problem was further compounded by the fact that Yamamoto had fought a few chapters before the Zero Division's introduction, and he had unleashed a level of power that could have easily destroyed the entirety of the Soul Society. Believe it or not, this incredible demonstration of power had now become the bar that people had set for the Zero Division to surpass. So coming off of the hype of Yamamoto's Bankai, everyone was excited to see exactly what the Zero Division had to show us, with Sanjumaru famously downplaying Yhwach having killed Yamamoto like it was nothing of significance, and this supports my previous idea of them being hyped up to an incredibly powerful level. The best and probably worst part of this was that Kubo had really leaned into the Zero Division hype. Right from the moment that they were introduced, they almost immediately established their superiority over the Gotei 13. We see Senjumaru completely disrespect Mayuri and the entire Research and Development Institute, as well as Tenjiro flexing on both Unohana and Soifon, which further drives home the idea that the Zero Division really is this incredible group of individuals that outclasses the Gotei 13 in every aspect. This hype had further continued as we learn more about each of the Zero Division members, as we find out that the Shinigami who make up the Zero Division aren't just some random bums, but rather they are pioneers who had earned their position as members of the Zero Division through their groundbreaking innovations. This is excellent for developing the lore behind the Zero Division, as it gives each of its members greater weight as characters, because each of them had played a part in helping the Soul Society to become what it is today. This one point alone suggests that we're dealing with a new level of experience, wisdom and power that no other Shinigami has revealed to us within the story thus far. So when Yhwach had finally arrived within the royal palace and declared war upon the Zero Division, the time had finally come for Squad Zero to show us what they are made of. And it's at this particular point within the story where I believe that Kubo had really started to struggle, as it became evident that plot points were being rushed, and the battles that unfolded on screen and off screen just didn't match up to the hype that was established earlier on. Yuha had ascended to the royal palace with Uryu and Hashward by his side, which means that he had planned to fight against the Zero Division with both Uryu and Hashward as backup. We had seen Yhwach partake in battle against Yamamoto, but in terms of Uryu and Hashward, this would be their first proper battles of the 1000-year Blood War arc. This is further compounded by the introduction of the Schutzstaffel, who are dubbed as the elite Quincy fighting force. So expectations were set even higher for this new group of characters who would be joining forces with Uryu and Hashward in order to battle the most powerful group of Shinigami. We know that the Schutzstaffel had ended up completely destroying the Zero Division, which had understandably tarnished their reputation amongst fans as characters as well as fighters, resulting in all of the hype that was established for the Zero Division as early as chapter 48 being a complete waste of time. On the other hand, it ended up selling the Schutzstaffel as a very powerful fighting force who would serve as endgame bosses for the Gotei 13 to battle against. The manga decided to set the credibility of this group of villains, but within the manga it had come at the price of sacrificing all of the hype and the build-up that we had for the Zero Division. I think that this narrative decision had massively backfired, because it resulted in the Gotei 13 battling and defeating the Schutzstaffel later on, which had indirectly meant that the Gotei 13 was stronger than the Zero Division, and it had invalidated their statement that the Zero Division are more powerful than the entirety of the Gotei 13, which by the end of the manga was really hard to believe, to be honest. So these mythical, legendary Shinigami who had innovated and built the history of the Soul Society ended up being surpassed by regular captains of the Gotei 13. The only member of the Zero Division who had redeemed them in any way was Ichibei, who went on to have a fantastic battle with Yhwach, which fans to this day praise as being one of the greatest fights in the entire series. So the Bleach manga had wrapped up in 2016, leading fans to believe that the powerful Zero Division were weaker than the current members of the Gotei 13. This notion has massive implications for the remainder of the Bleach story. If we are to get a continuation via an upcoming Hell arc, which hints at a battle that could reach every single realm within the Bleach universe, but what reason would there be for the Zero Division to step in if the current Gotei 13 have already proven that they are stronger than them? Now, I do have a video dedicated to how the Zero Division were disappointments within the manga, so do go and check that out. But let's now turn our attention towards how Kubo had got a chance to put forward his true vision for the Bleach story in the all-new anime, as the Zero Division ended up getting a massive redemption arc which caught us all by surprise. So let's talk about how the anime fixes the portrayal betrayal of the Zero Division. Right from the onset, the anime fixes the most bizarre choice to have Uryu and Hashwad completely disappear from the fight. They are present throughout the entire encounter, and they even have an opportunity to battle against the Zero Division themselves. So the point at which the anime diverges from the manga is following the arrival of the Zero Division and the activation of Kiryu Hikifune's Cage of Life. Unlike the manga, where Yhwach stands aside and watches the Schutzstaffel battle the Zero Division, in the anime, Uryu ends up using his Shrift ability, the Antithesis, as he teleports him out of Kiryu's Cage of Life so that he can commence his battle with Ichibei sooner in the anime. While this is a video about the Zero Division, I cannot help but to praise this brilliant decision of having Uryu be the one to free Yhwach. This action validates his presence within the battle and gives a preview glimpse into Uryu's Shrift ability, as well as explaining how Yhwach was able to escape from the cage. The anime reveals that it is an impossible feat to destroy the cage, with even Hashwad attempting to destroy it at a larger scale, but it ends up being instantly restored by Kiryu. While Kiryu doesn't have too many anime exclusive fight sequences, these additional scenes that are included within the anime which reveal her restoring the cage, it helps to emphasize the skills of a Zero Division member who didn't really get much screen time within the manga. It took the literal condensed power of pretty much Yhwach's entire Quincy army to destroy her Cage of Life. This was a level of power that Yhwach himself couldn't even replicate because he had divided it amongst the Schutzstaffel and himself, so it really felt like a one-off escape from the Cage of Life instead of Pranida effortlessly ripping it open like he did within the manga, which is an extremely insulting way to escape it considering the fact that the Zero Division had spent so much time preparing the cage. The manga makes them look incredibly incompetent because even with adequate prep time they still couldn't meaningfully restrict Yhwach and his soldiers. So I'm very pleased with all of the changes that were made to the Cage of Life within the anime, as it genuinely felt like an inescapable prison, which is what it should have felt like within the manga. By having Yhwach escape from the cage early, it added to the stakes of the battle, and it made the Zero Division feel like they really knew what they were doing, because Korinji, Nimaya, Kiryu, and Senjumaru don't seem to be too bothered that Yhwach had escaped, because they are that confident in Ichibei's abilities, knowing that he will take him down, and of course they are very confident in their own abilities, believing that they will be easily able to defeat the Schutzstaffel, who at the time of Yhwach escaping had already been defeated by Nimaya. Following Yuha's departure from the Cage of Life, we see Uryu and Hashwad, who are implied to be just as strong or even stronger than all of the Schutzstaffel, as Uryu battles Senjumaru while Hashwad battles Korinji. While these fight sequences are very brief, it's more than enough to showcase to us a vast difference in power and skill between the two groups. Senjumaru and Korinji make very quick work of the Quincy duo, as Senjumaru effortlessly takes out Uryu while Korinji goes up against Hashwad blow for blow and beats him using nothing but pure swordsmanship. This is an absolutely massive redemption for Korinji in particular, because if you recall the events of the manga, he was given very little respect with how he was handled. He ended up being ignored very shortly after he had appeared before Yhwach, and this could be partially attributed to Nyanzol Weasel's Shrift ability, because he had attempted to attack Yhwach several times but none of his attacks were making contact, and unfortunately from this point onwards within the story he had little to no screen time, eventually being off-screen. Him being ignored by Yhwach and his men was pretty much his #1 achievement during this fight, and it's no surprise that he was admitted into Fraud Academy until the release of the 1000-Year Blood War arc Cour finale, which thankfully had given his character some much needed justice. Now following the defeats of Uryu and Hashwad, Yhwach decides to cast the Asvalen. This had coincided with Ichibei having used Ichimonji's ability to cut names in order to reduce Yhwach to half of his original power. Now in the manga version of events, Yhwach is able to unexplainably just give power to himself and restore his name. While this is an extremely badass feat, it is weird and it doesn't really explain how Yhwach can just instantly fix himself despite having his existence conceptually halved. So the anime does a much better job of explaining this, because Yhwach restoring his powers the way that he does within the manga just doesn't make any sense. Imagine a 1-liter bottle of water. It can only hold 1 liter of water within its space. When it ends up being cut in half, it can only hold half of that amount, which would mean that no matter how much water you put back into the halved bottle, it will only be able to hold 500 milliliters because it's been cut in half, which explains how Ichibei had conceptually downgraded Yhwach, and the manga via plot armor restores Yhwach's power, whereas the anime gives a proper explanation by having him cast Asvalen later on in the story, so that it coincides with Ichibei using his Shikai against Yhwach. The decision to have Ashwaunen empower Yhwach was pure genius on Kubo's part. This is because the manga had already established exactly how the power absorbed by the Ashwaunen had functioned. The manga's explanation states that Ashwaunen doesn't absorb spiritual energy or even reishi from its victims, but rather it absorbs the very idea of power from their souls. This is how Yhwach was able to restore his lost power, and via him using the Ashwaunen and the raw power that was collected from it, it was able to decimate the Cage of Life. In my honest opinion, how the Ashwaunen was used within the anime was nothing short of genius, and it ends up really helping how the battles play out between the Zero Division versus the Schutzstaffel, as well as Ichibei versus Yhwach. Now, after the Schutzstaffel are resurrected and are empowered by the Ashwaunen, they begin their battle with the Zero Division once again. Now, Kubo decides to troll the audience once more, as it seems as though we have returned to manga continuity, where we see Lil kick things off by punching a hole through Uetsu Nimaya's body like he does within the manga. I do recall beginning to panic here like crazy, because when I had seen Kurinji and Kiryu fail to protect Nimaya, I thought that the remainder of the battle was about to unfold just like it did within the manga. Thankfully, I couldn't have been more wrong, because Kurinji uses Kinpeka in order to blind the Schutzstaffel, which allows Senjumaru to intervene and rescue Nimaya. I can't help but to think that Kubo had known exactly what he was doing when he was writing this section of the anime script. Going into Cour 2, fans were already aware of Kubo having worked extremely hard on some anime original sequences which were going to be included into Cour 2. While Senjumaru carries the unconscious Nimaya away, she stuffs the holes in his body with cotton that instantly repair his body tissue that he has lost, and before long he is good as new again. The Zero Division then assemble within the sky above the Schutzstaffel, and then in a very meta moment they mock the Schutzstaffel for assuming that it would have been that easy to defeat them, with Kurinji stating the now infamous line about how the Zero Division have more power than the Gotei 13 combined. This whole section of the fight feels like Kubo had dedicated it to all of the naysayers who had written off the Zero Division based upon their performance within the manga, and he is about to prove all of them wrong. This is where round 2 commences via several anime exclusive fight sequences. Now, unlike their first encounter, the Zero Division begins to struggle against the Schutzstaffel and are eventually defeated by them. Now, despite the Zero Division losing this round, it still ends up being a very fair fight, with Gerard overpowering Senjumaru, with Askin outmaneuvering Kurinji, as well as Lil once again getting the upper hand on Nimaya. And when it comes to Pernida, Kiryu had struggled to figure out his abilities, which means that the Zero Division did in fact lose this round, but it wasn't a humiliating defeat. Following this, we get one of the most important anime-only sequences within the entirety of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime, as the Zero Division's true power is finally revealed. We find out that the Zero Division actually fights under a massive power restriction due to the fact that if they were to utilize their true power by activating their Bankai, then it would threaten the stability of the 3 realms. So for this reason, they have utilized their own lives in order to seal away this destructive power, which means that in order for one of the Zero Division members to utilize their true power, 3 of the other members must die in order to break the seal. It's with this knowledge that Nimaya chooses Senjumaru to be the one to defeat the Schutzstaffel. Now the choice is then finalized by the remaining 3 members of the Zero Division ending their own lives, and the rest is honestly history. I've actually made an entire video breaking down Senjumaru's Bankai, so I'd highly recommend that you check it out. These new anime-only sequences featuring the Zero Division fix a lot of the problems which I had mentioned from the manga, and these corrections have been made in very creative ways, like how the Zero Division's powers have been sealed away. This idea of Shinigami having seals which are represented by symbols is not a new idea. The Blood Oath seal is simply just an upgraded Gentei Kaijo, a seal that was meant to restrict spiritual pressure so as to not harm souls when powerful Shinigami visit the world of the living. Now take this concept and apply it to 4 Shinigami who each individually possess more power than all of the Gotei 13. Now for context, the spiritual pressure from Yamamoto's Bankai alone was enough to threaten the destruction of all of the Soul Society. If the Zero Division members really represent this much power, then it would make sense that they need to seal their power away, unless they want to disrupt the balance of reality. And considering the fact that the Zero Division literally exists in order to maintain the balance of the realms, you can totally understand why they need to seal their powers away. I'm just a massive fan of how this was implemented into the anime original scenes, as Kubo calls back to early concepts like Gentei Kaijo, which have already existed for quite a long time. Some fans have said that Ichibei's Bankai not shaking the universe is a plot hole, but I think that fans coming out with statements like this couldn't be be more wrong. Ichibe's Shikai and Bankai don't disrupt reality because his powers are used across all of reality. The abilities of Ichibe Zanbakuto are more than just a power-up, it's a literal force of nature, which is why instead of us seeing the universe tremble when he activates his powers, we're instead showed multiple locations within the world where Ichibe's power over the color black reaches. So it's not a plot hole, it's just people not understanding how Ichibe's powers work. Now, the sacrifice ritual that the Zero Division have to do is an excellent way of explaining why we never got to see the Zero Division's Bankai and why we're only seeing it now within the anime. Taking into consideration the fact that 3 members of the Zero Division have to sacrifice themselves in order for one Zero Division Bankai to be revealed ensures that the power-up will feel like a titanic event every time. This addition to the lore of Bleach ensures that the Zero Division lives up to our lofty expectations, and Kubo manages to achieve this without even revealing the mystery of their true powers, by implying that every single one of the Zero Division members are universal shaking monsters in their own right. It leaves fans feeling satisfied by only seeing Senjumaru's Bankai, because this is all that fans need to be shown for the point to come across. This means that we could definitely see the other members of the Zero Division reveal their Bankai in the future, possibly via the Hell arc, which could be a storyline that sees the Shinigami turning against the current status quo of reality. With the balance of reality being disrupted, the Zero Division are certainly going to be involved, as it's their job to maintain that balance. Even with the powers of the Zero Division heavily restricted, they still scale up to the levels of captain rank. And now that we have been given a glimpse into their true power, it has made the Zero Division truly an impressive group of individuals who were properly redeemed within the anime, and in my opinion their portrayal was fixed within the Bleach narrative thanks to all of these new scenes. If there's anything that you can take away from this video, it's that one of the best things to come out of all of these changes that have been made to the Zero Division, which have resulted in their redemption, is the fact that Kubo is willing to make some drastic changes to the 1000 Year Blood War arc in order to enhance the enjoyment of fans. So there is no telling just how far Kubo will go with some of the changes that are going to be upcoming in Cour 3 and Cour 4. So we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you think about how the Zero Division were handled within the anime? Are you as pleased as I was with all of the changes that have been made to this elite group of Shinigami? Do you think that the Zero Division have well and truly been redeemed? Do you think that we're going to be getting some more anime exclusive scenes featuring them in Cour 3 and 4? Be sure to let me know all of your thoughts by continuing the discussion in the comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.